Imagine a hero who is a brain surgeon, a genius physicist, a rock band star, and a test pilot, all at the same time. His name is a Buckaroo Banzai, and he is the only one who can stop an alien invasion and save Smolensk. It all sounds like a bad joke. But in 1984, a movie came out where all of this happened for real and very seriously. This is a channel a little longer, and my name is Max Chkonia. In the CineUnderground series, I talk about weird, hidden, but very interesting movies. And today's pick is The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai Across the Earth Dimension. In 1984, theaters saw the release of Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, David Lynch's Dune, The First Terminator, A Nightmare on Elm Street, and many other great movies that are now considered classics. But the same year, one of the strangest films of the decade also came out. If you try to quickly explain what The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai Across the Eighth Dimension is, it won't go well. Because this movie feels like a mix of everything that was cool in 1980s sci-fi. A team of heroes wearing bright outfits and playing rock music. Aliens who've been living among us for a long time, an obsession with technology, quantum physics and philosophy. I'll skip some plot details because it's almost impossible to explain everything that's going on in this story. The main character is a man who can do absolutely everything. He is a brain surgeon, a genius scientist, a test pilot, a rock star, and the leader of his own team that saves the world between Bentley heroes. His name is a Buckaroo Banzai, and one day he accidentally breaks through the barrier between worlds and enters the 8th dimension, where evil aliens called Lectroids are trapped. One of them, John Warfin, has been hiding on Earth for a long time and is getting ready to escape and free his army. Buckaroo has to stop him or humanity will be destroyed. And believe me, this is a very short version of the story. The most popular way people describe this movie is: imagine turning on a TV show halfway through and trying to figure out what's going on. The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai is sci-fi, parody, comic book, satire, an adventure action movie all at once. Too weird to be a blockbuster, too smart to be just a joke, and too bold to forget. It's actually kind of surprising how all the pieces of the future movie came together in one place to make it exactly the way it is. It all started back in the 1970s when the director of the film, W.D. Richter, met Earl McGraw, who wanted to become a screenwriter. Richter also wrote scripts himself, and in his whole directing career he made only 2 films: The Adventure of Buckaroo Banzai and a sci-fi drama called Late for Dinner. He is better known for his screenplays, including one for a movie that clearly follows the spirit of the Buckaroo story, Big Trouble in Little China with Kurt Russell. We'll come back to that one later. Rao wrote only a few screenplays, and the most famous one, besides our movie of course, is New York, New York by Martin Scorsese. But the most important thing is that for many years he had been trying to write stories about a hero named Buckaroo Banzai. Strange, absurd, funny tales inspired by 1970s kung fu movies. These drafts didn't have a clear dramatic structure, but they had a special style, a mix of comic books, pulp fiction and postmodern irony. Richter was so fascinated by this chaos that he asked Rauch to turn it all into one full screenplay. Rauch and Richter wanted to challenge the idea of sequels. At that time there were already Star Wars, James Bond, Planet of the Apes, Rocky and Jaws. Buckaroo Banzai was meant to be an anti-blockbuster, not because of its format, but because of its concept. It was a postmodern story that threw the viewer into what felt like one random episode of a huge saga, a saga no one had ever seen before. Buckaroo Banzai has a team, but we don't really learn much about them, and even about Buckaroo himself. We don't find out that much. Most of what we know comes from the text on the screen. Usually this kind of intro is seen as lazy and too simple, but in this movie it's necessary, not only because without it things would be almost impossible to follow, but also because it's a clear parody of Star Wars. Later, many critics said that main problem was that the viewer couldn't really understand how the movie's universe works, what kind of physics it follows, or what rules it plays by. But again, that's exactly why many people love the film. It's almost impossible to predict what's going to happen next. This movie isn't just a wild mix of absurdity and a strange humor, like a Leslie Nielsen comedy. No, Buckaroo Banzai is a more complex thing. Not to mention, the movie doesn't have Leslie Nielsen. Because again, at that strange point where all the pieces of this film came together, a completely different group of actors showed up. And these were real stars who just hadn't become stars yet. First on the list, so maybe not in star power, is Peter Weller. His biggest movie would come 3 years later, RoboCop. Weller wasn't the most obvious choice to play Buckaroo Banzai, but he brought to the character a calm attitude, a touch of formality, and an amazing sense of balance between comedy and action. One of the main villains in the movie is played by John Lithgow, who at the time was just rising to fame. Before Buckaroo, he had a big and memorable role in the film adaptation of John Irving's The World According to Garp. By the way, that's one of my favorite books, and I am always happy to recommend it. After Buckaroo, John Lithgow would go on to star in Harry and the Henderson and Third Rock from the Sun. Jeff Goldblum shows up as part of Buckaroo's team, wearing a cowboy outfit, which was of a reference to the kids' show Howdy Doody. At that point, Goldblum was also far from being famous. The Fly with Cronenberg was still 2 years away. And of course, Christopher Lloyd. At the time, he was already a known TV actor, mostly thanks to the show Taxi. But let's be honest, that was just a small taste of the fame he would get 1 year later, when Back to the Future came out. They all came together in the adventures of Buckaroo Banzai, and later Peter Weller said they became real friends on set. Maybe the movie didn't give their careers a big boost, but who knows. Maybe John Lithgow's fantastic role as a Dr. Emilio Lizardo showed the world that he could do comedy. Maybe that perfectly raised eyebrow during the Hong Kong Cavaliers concert helped Peter Weller become Robocop. And Jeff Goldblum, well, he's Jeff Goldblum. He was always meant to become Ian Malcolm and say,
right all the time.
By the way, if you've made it this far, chances are you will really enjoy this kind of movie madness, so go ahead and like this video and subscribe to the channel. In the CineUnderground series, I regularly talk about films that were too weird to become hits, but slowly found their fans. And be sure to write in the comments which movie you think would fit this series. Maybe the next video will be about your pick. For example, the idea to talk about Buckaroo came from a comment on the last video, the one about Phase 4, where ants attack humans. I won't go into detail about how hard the filming process was, it's always tough. Writers and producers almost always argue and usually they find a compromise. But sometimes, like in this case, that compromise can actually hurt the film. The producers wanted a regular movie, maybe with a bit of silliness. The creators, on the other hand, wanted an artsy parody-style comic book. They argued, did reshoots, and in the end, it seems like neither side felt like they won. But the real winners were the viewers who ended up loving the film. Let me point out two important things from the filming process. At some point, the relationship between the studio and the film crew got really cold. The filmmakers started thinking that no one was watching the footage, so they added a scene where Jeff Goldblum's character notices a watermelon and asks, "What is this watermelon doing here?" Even though the scene fits the movie absurd style, it was really put in just to test if the producers were paying attention. The producers didn't notice the scene, so the filmmakers felt free to go all out. And the second but more important detail. The original cinematographer for the movie was the legendary Jordan Cronenweth, who shot Blade Runner. The only condition the studio had for hiring him was that the film shouldn't look like Blade Runner. But after a week of filming, they felt it still looked too similar. So they replaced Cronenweth with another cinematographer, Fred Konekamp. He wasn't a downgrade, so he was an excellent pro, who also shot the amazing film Papillon with Steve McQueen and Dustin Hoffman. But it feels like Cronenweth could have taken the film to a whole other level. In fact, one of the few scenes he shot, and that stayed in the final cut, is considered one of the best, the bar scene where Buckaroo's band performs. That's where the main character says his famous line, "No matter where you go, there you are." Fans of the movie love to quote that moment. Sadly, Cronenweth wasn't even credited in the film. And now we're getting to the reason why the adventures of Buckaroo Banzai was so loved by some viewers and disliked by others. And it all happened for the same reason, because Buckaroo, both the character and the movie, breaks all the rules. This mix of genres, comedy, sci-fi, parody and superhero action, worked both for the creators and against the movie's success at the box office. The movie was very unexpected and unique in its own way. Viewers who saw it in theaters might have fallen in love with it, but it was hard for them to explain to their friends what they had seen. Word of mouth didn't really work. I'm sure this video doesn't fully capture what the movie is about either, so the reviews from people who watched it didn't really help Buckaroo. The same happened with the marketing campaign. The promoters just didn't know how to advertise it. Because of that, many who came expecting a tough action movie got a silly comedy, and those who expected a sci-fi adventure saw a satirical action film instead. It's not like nothing similar came before Buckaroo. For example, in 1980, just a few years earlier, there was Flash Gordon, another strange mix of genres that also flopped at the box office. But Flash Gordon at least had original comic book source material, so the audience had some idea of what to expect. Maybe this kind of boldness would have worked 10 years later. In the 90s, audiences seemed more open to experiment like that. But in the mid-80s, people didn't expect a single movie to mix Orson Welles references, Star Wars, Thomas Pynchon, Eastern philosophy, spy thrillers and comic book style all at once. Buckaroo Banzai offers an alternative to predictable movies, strange dialogue, an over-the-top cool main character, and a world where almost nothing is explained, but you still want to figure it out. That might sound a bit too pretentious, but honestly it really is a puzzle movie, with the rules mixed up on purpose, and that's what makes it so intriguing. Let's be honest, there are plenty of weird movies that are just plain bad, but then there are the weird ones that actually bring something new to the table. And those are the ones that, over time, not only find a cult following, but go on to inspire other filmmakers. That's exactly what happened with the adventures of Buckaroo Banzai across the 8th dimension. Among its fans are Wes Anderson, Quentin Tarantino, Edgar Wright, Kevin Smith, John Carpenter, and horror director Panos Cosmatos, and many others. Even the cast themselves have called it one of their favorite projects. Wes Anderson isn't just a fan, he actively quotes Buckaroo Banzai in his own films. The most famous example is the ending of The Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou, which closely mirrors the final scene of Buckaroo Banzai, and the fact that Jeff Goldblum appears in both films only makes the reference more striking. It's not hard to spot the influence on John Carpenter and his Big Trouble in Little China. Structurally, the film is similar to Buckaroo Banzai. The viewer is thrown straight into the deep end of a story, and world that follows its own strange logic. But there's also a direct link between the two. One of the writers of Big Trouble was none other than W.D. Richter, the director of Buckaroo Banzai. Kevin Smith took it even further. As a reminder, the creators of Buckaroo Banzai had plans to launch a full-blown franchise. The end of the film even teases a sequel, Buckaroo Banzai Against the World Crime League. But as you might guess, after the movie flopped at the box office, that sequel never happened. So Kevin Smith, the creator of Clerks and Dogma, is one of the main directors loved by geeks. He didn't just become a fan of the movie, he even wanted to make a sequel. At first people talk about a second movie, but by 2016 there was serious talk about a TV series about Buckaroo Banzai. Still, because of legal problems with the original creators, it never happened. But even though we never saw a sequel, it's still too early to lose hope. The movie got extra materials, there were comics and books, there were improved DVD editions, there was even a video game. The game came out almost at the same time as the movie. It was made for computers of that time, so now it's hard to play it. If you find an emulator, be sure to tell me. And there are also references to the movie. Buckaroo left a mark in the other popular culture works. In the movie Ready Player One, the main hero is going on a date. He chooses Buckaroo Banzai's appearance for himself.
Buckaroo Banzai?
Yeah.
Really?
The adventures of Buckaroo Banzai across the 8th dimension became an important part of geek culture. I am sure we will see more references to Buckaroo in movies. There will be homages and different nods to him again and again. It's a crazy, absurd, even surreal movie. You might not like it, but you will definitely remember it. It's like walking into a room where a party is already happening. You seem to be late. By little, you start to feel the atmosphere, you begin to get the jokes, you start meeting the guests. This was a story from our new series CineUnderground. Please like, subscribe to the channel and don't forget to write in the comments which movie you want to see here. And remember, no matter where you go, there you are.